Okay, perfect. So it's wonderful to be here. Um, I'm really excited about this hackathon, and I was also helping last year, and it was also very neat. So what I was asked to talk to you about is to give you a little bit of an overview of what a Chrome extension is. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So first, what is a Chrome extension? It's a small program that customizes the browsing experience. Why would you build a Chrome extensions? What are the kinds of things you can do? I'm sure you've heard of a Chrome extension like Grammarly or Adblock, or you probably have Chrome extensions that you use right now. But in general, here are stuff that's easier to do with a Chrome extension than anything else. And that's enhance or modify web pages. The easiest way to modify an existing web page is through a Chrome extension, or automate repetitive tasks, or integrate services directly in the browser. All of those things are really easy to do with a Chrome extension because it lives directly in a browser where a lot of interesting stuff already lives. So our goal is to understand a little bit how Chrome extension is built so that you can see that there's nothing to it. And also show you a very simple extension and give you some code that you can start looking at um, for your hackathon. Now, a little bit more detail on what a Chrome extension is. Some of the common use cases are ad blockers, password managers, productivity tools, tab managers. What's really neat about Chrome extensions is that they can access anything on the internet directly, and they're very easy to integrate with external APIs like GitHub, Google Calendar, or AWS. And it allows you to do UI improvements or real-time page modifications. So for instance, one Google Chrome extension that I use in Gmail gives me a read receipt indicator for all of my emails. So it does a couple of things. It changes the user interface of my Gmail to get the read receipt, but it also injects the read receipt in every email that I send. So a Google Chrome extension can do a lot of things. The high level idea is that your code has a privileged access to the browser environment, which any web app can be built on, and it runs separately from normal web pages scripts, so it has access to a lot more than a regular web page. So Chrome extension is as powerful as a program on your computer, but as flexible as a web page. It's sort of like the sweet spot between those two worlds. Now, you might be asking yourself, like, why are we encouraging you to build Chrome extensions? What's the idea here? It's if you're hearing this for the first time, I wouldn't I wouldn't it wouldn't surprise me if you thought that this was a little bit discounted. You're like, oh, I thought I was going to be a software engineering build like a big full stack app, and here you're telling me to build like a puny little Chrome extension. So what is the reason for that? Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons, and I've tried to put them there. First of all, you should know that Chrome extensions is what I use in my software engineering course in undergrad. So CIS 350, the project is a Chrome extension. So why? The first reason is that the Chrome extension is of most projects that you could create in a hackathon is the one with the minimal operational costs. Because a Chrome extension runs entirely client-side in a browser, you do not have to figure out where it's hosted. It's going to be run on everybody's computer. But on the other hand, the fact that has minimal operational costs, you might say, oh, well, a mobile app also has minimal operational costs, or any app for a computer. But the thing that makes a Chrome extension particularly nice is that the platform that it runs on is your browser. So it's naturally cross-platform. It naturally doesn't, you don't have the issues of writing for Windows or Linux or Mac or mobile. Once you write for a Chrome extension, it can work in any device that has a browser. And what's really nice is that one of the things that in technology is that things really get outdated quickly. What's nice is that when you're building for the browser, because the browser has all of this grandfathered technology, web pages built 20 years ago still need to run today, then the Chrome extension is going to be very stable. So things that you build today are still going to be running in 5 years. Now, if you're building this as a portfolio item and your main use is to show that you can build something, it's really useful that if you build it today, you know it will work in a year, in 2 years, and in 5 years. It means that whether or not your Chrome extension has value in the market, in terms of your portfolio, it will always be there for you to show an employer or a friend or a graduate applicant. While you're doing Chrome extensions, so all of you, most of you, I think, have taken CIT 5, 9, 10, 20, and 30. So that's Java, discrete math, and systems. So to do a hackathon, you need new skills that you're going to have to acquire on your own. One of the advantages of Chrome extensions is that we're not asking you in just 3 days to acquire an immense number of new skills. The types of skills that you need for Chrome extensions are just front-end skills. So what I tell my students in my intro course, because also they're really excited about full stack apps, and I say, well, look, if when you're applying for jobs, there is such a thing as a front-end developer and back-end developer, and then there's this job called full stack, don't you think that all of that is really complicated enough that you shouldn't have to do it all in one course or one hackathon? So here, if you can get something out of this hackathon without getting overwhelmed, it could be focusing on front end. And when you're building a Chrome extension, basically the Chrome extension is just a front end that's put in the wild. So you have a little bit of front end work, a little bit of connection in the browser extension, but you don't have all of the challenges that come with back-end development. So back-end development is the other half of a front-end stack. It's the part that lives on a server as opposed to somebody's computer. And so having the back-end server deployment and cost and all of that usually makes a project much more complicated. So by focusing just on the front end, you're able to take much more time to create something that is more likely to be of your ideas than to try to just get to the basics of getting back-end and front-end just knitted. And then the last thing is that it would be nice if you could build anything during this hackathon. That's the goal, right? But what's really nice with a Chrome extension is because it's so lightweight, because it's so robust, if you have a good idea, it's not that big of a stretch to then monetize it. You can very easily go with a simple, the use of a library, you can very easily start monetizing a Chrome extension. So for all of these reasons, a Chrome extension is a pretty good project, especially one of the first projects if you're building something. So I also want to, I was saying you might think that it's puny, that it's small or something like that. Chrome extensions have been around for as long as Chrome has been around. They've been around for a really long time. They're probably going to be around for a really long time. So if you're writing something using this technology, it's not going to be outdated. It actually is probably not going to be outdated as fast as a mobile app. There were some people who were writing Flash programs back when this was first started. Flash doesn't exist anymore. I don't know if you even know what Flash is. So here's a big timeline. In 1994, first browser, which is Netscape Navigator. Chrome was released in 2008 because Google was fed up with the fact that Microsoft, Apple, and Netscape were doing a really terrible job of maintaining one standard. And then Chrome pretty much took over. They introduced Chrome extensions as soon as 2009 with the Manifest v1, and they iterated this framework of Chrome extensions. So the only thing that's changed is that as time has gone by, because Chrome extensions have so much access to your computer and browser, Chrome, as Chrome extensions became more popular, has improved the security framework and made it more secure. The reason I'm telling you this is because some of the problems that you might encounter will have to do with what is called Manifest v3. And it's just that they made extensions a little bit more secure. Now, if you're Googling stuff on Stack Overflow and if you're asking ChatGPT, they might still have data from Manifest v2. So often you should ask and make sure that what you're getting is Manifest v3 information, or it will seem like it's not working. Today, browser extensions are integral to the entire web ecosystem. And when I say Chrome extensions, what I really mean is browser extensions. Since the underlying standards are the same, what you develop as a Chrome extension will also work with Firefox, Edge, Safari, and I don't know who knows about Opera anymore, with minor modifications. So I also wanted to show you just for context why we're calling them Chrome extensions. It's basically because most people use Chrome as a browser. Um, as you can see, Chrome, when it was launched, it went from 0 to everything very quickly. You might have heard that there's an antitrust action against Chrome, but really what happened is that Chrome brought really vastly superior technology. Before Chrome, browsers were terrible, and it replaced the most terrible of them all in terms of developer, because one of the challenges that developers had was to ensure that things were the same in different browsers. But one of the challenges they had is that Internet Explorer websites would display differently depending on the version. So they were really doing a bad job. And it was really making the web not a reliable place to build products. So some of the graphs that you can see here is that there are a lot of Chrome extensions. There's like 100,000. And you can see sort of like the distribution of the categories. So the top one is productivity over fun. Then there's fun, photos, developer tools, social and communication. So the email tool I mentioned is in social and communication. Then accessibility, search tool. And that was a couple of years ago. There must be many more AI tools now. And here I wanted to show you, you can make money from Chrome extensions. Most people will think of the iOS store because that's where a lot of big bucks are, but you can make money. So most revenue is from one-off. So you unlock like premium features, but you can also have recurring subscriptions or acquisition payments for content. Okay, so we're going to talk about a high-level architecture of Chrome extensions. Mention all of the key components, give you an example of the user interface. We'll see a Hello World example, and then I'll show you a bunch of examples that were built by my students. And then at the end of the presentation, since this is a hackathon and you're under a lot of pressure, I just created like 7 or 6 problems that are very frequent that you might stumble on, just to give you a heads up. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to interrupt me. Yeah, there's no questions on Zoom. Crap. There we go. Okay. So what you know is Java. What you're going to need to learn for this hackathon, it's not as much as for past hackathons, but basically you need to learn JavaScript or learn how to ask ChatGPT to produce convincing JavaScript. Because of course, think of it this way. Writing JavaScript is something you would pick up just like in an afternoon as you're learning a new job. It's the same thing if you're going to work for software company X. They will ask you to learn Go or Rust or whatever in an afternoon. So learning things on the go is not a big deal. Using ChatGPT isn't a big deal either. And what you need to see it's not that you're cheating by using a tool like that, but all of a sudden your role has to be much more focused on the design. So if you're asking ChatGPT to help you with the code, you need to make sure that it knows what are the inputs, what are the outputs, and that the code that it's producing is going to all click together. You're basically with ChatGPT going from one of the low-level builders to the high-level architect. And so it gives you a lot more power. It absolutely does not dilute your control, but it requires you to take control. So one of you're going to need a UI framework. So you can build a Chrome extension without learning any UI framework, but that would be sort of a missed opportunity because if you use just plain vanilla JavaScript, I'll show you an example of an extension that does. Your extension will look like, it will not look nice. I wanted to keep it PG. So for all of these reasons, this is a nice opportunity for you to use React or Angular. React is Facebook, Angular is Google, Svelte is I forget who. But you can try any one of those frameworks. The reason you might want to try React, and goodness knows I hate advertising for any of Meta's products, but the reason you might use React is because there's a sample extension that you can use as a starter piece of code. And what's really a little bit delicate is when you're deploying these extensions, you might not know this, but ES6 has to be compiled into ES5, and that's done transparently by most frameworks. But if you are starting from scratch, you would have to set it up. So for all these reasons, it might be easier for you to use React and to start from the sample extension that I'll be giving you. So one of the things that I want to highlight is, don't worry, this technological stack is not overwhelming, and there is enough time for you to familiarize yourself with it. So you're not, if you're going to do a Chrome extension, you're not headed into the chaos of, what some of your peers might have had last year, where they have to learn how to deploy Node.js and the React on top and how to make the two things talk together and deploying them live on a GitHub and everything. It's a little bit much for a first project. Now, let's just give you a high-level sense of how a Chrome extension works. So if you Google Chrome extension architecture, you might get several architectures, again, because there's been 3 versions of them. This is the latest version, and in the latest version, what's specific about it is that the extension is really isolated. So it's isolated here and it's isolated there. If the extension is non-isolated, you're looking at one of the previous modules. So the files, the parts of a Chrome extension are the manifest.json file. This is the configuration file that describes your extension. So it says the name, the version, the permissions, what it uses, and everything. It's the most important file. Then you have a background script. So a background script is everything that's going to be run by Chrome while your extension is running. So the background script is going to be always running as long as your extension is active, unless it's put on sleep. The background script has to handle any events that you want your Chrome extension to know about. Now, the second part is the content script. The content script is separate from the background script. The background script only has access to the browser, but it doesn't have access to your page. This is to ensure that there's a tight privacy and security sandbox between the extension and your browsing data. What does have access to what you browse and both the content, the address, and everything is the content script. The content script is injected in the page, and it registers rules that Chrome is going to summon it for when the rules are respected. So for instance, you might say, I'm going to block all ads on the New York Times page. So your Chrome extension is going to register a rule saying, when you're browsing a New York Times page, call me. And what that means is that when the browser is on a New York Times page, the content script is going to be woken up, and it's going to be said, hey, here's a page where you need to process because it's part of your rules. So what's neat is that when the rules are triggered, the content script is injected, and then it has access to everything that's in the page. The reason it's this way is that when a user adds a Chrome extension, they're warned about all of the access that the Chrome extension wants to have. So for instance, in my case, it will say the Chrome extension will access all of the data and the history that you browse on NewYorkTimes.com. Are you okay with that? And that's how the browser knows that the user is okay with the Chrome extension snooping on its New York Times page. So then we have the pop-up. So that's an HTML page. It's the interface of the Chrome extension when you're opening it up. And optionally, you can have an options page to display settings to the user. So the way that this works is that when the extension is loaded, it registers the rules and it runs the background script. And then it is never again summoned until the user makes an interaction. So the user clicks on a link, And Google checks to see in the rules if the Chrome extension needs to be summoned. If it does, it's summoned. Then it goes and it makes the HTTP request. It has an HTTP answer. And then if appropriate, it transfers this to the Chrome extension. So the Chrome extension has multiple endpoints where it can act. It can act before a request is made, for instance, to block requests to add websites. And it can take control after a request has been received to change the content of the page. Okay, so I just wanted you to see a Chrome extension all in one page. So these are the four files that are needed for the Hello World extension. So if you go to the link at the very top, and I will share the slides with you. If you go to the link on the very top, this is part of Google's tutorial. That's what the manifest.json looks like. So it has the name, the description, the version of the extension. The manifest version, it has to be 3 nowadays. And then action defines the action that this extension can take. So it says that there's an action means that it's going to create a button that it creates here. The default icon is the file that is going to be used for the button of the icon. Hello.html is the pop-up file that's going to be displayed when you click on the extension. So when the extension is loaded, it's registering the action here that creates a button. When the button is opened, hello.html is displayed, and popup.js is loaded, and it writes, this is the pop-up in the console. So when I click on the button and I open my JavaScript console, I'm going to get, this is a pop-up in the JavaScript extension. So this shows you a really simple example of a manifest, a pop-up, and a content script. So if you wanted to do this yourselves, you would just create a new folder, Hello World extension. You would add the files I just showed you with the exact same text. And then to load it in Chrome, you would do what is called loading an unpacked extension. So it's because it has all of its guts in a folder. You would go to chrome.extension, enable developer mode, click load unpacked, and then select this Hello World folder. And that will load the extension just as I showed you. So what the manifest file contains is, besides the name, description, and version, as we said, it specifies all the permissions that the extension is going to have access to. And as you can see, the permissions are very granular. So for instance, tabs gives you access to every tabs that are currently displayed. Storage gives you access to local storage in the browser, and there's multiple different versions of that we'll see in a future slide. Active tab gives you access to the tab that the user is currently looking at, but none of the other tabs. And then there's a bunch of other things. Then you have to define, when you're creating content scripts, you have to define what rules they match. So here, the content script would be injected for all URLs, but it could just be like New York Times, as I said. And then we have to determine what background script is running in the background. So this is a typical background script. It runs separately from any web page. Its responsibilities are to manage the global state of the extension, to listen for events like, when the extension is installed, maybe you want to show like a welcome to this extension and here's how to use it. Or maybe you want to say, hey, please support us and donate like AdBlock does when you install it. And then it communicates with the content script via message passing. So the content script, it has access to your web page or whatever, but it has very little power. It can't do anything in the Chrome API world. The only thing it can do is it can talk to the background script and tell the background script to go do advanced stuff. That all has to do with the security model of Chrome extensions. And in real life, you might find similar security models when you're developing for iOS or when you're developing for any trusted device that's running in an interpreted sandbox. And then finally, you have content script. So it runs inside the web page. So it has access to the DOM. It can read and modify the web page directly, and it interacts with the background script using chrome.runtime.sendMessage or chrome.runtime.onMessage when it receives them. Okay, and then finally, the pop-up is the small UI that appears when the user clicks your extensions icon. It's typically an HTML file with a corresponding JavaScript file. It accesses to some of Chrome APIs from the pop-up, but not the web page DOM. Okay, so now I want to talk about all of the UI, the user interface elements that are available to you in a Chrome extension. So we already mentioned a couple of them, but there are a few more. And they all have some space in the user experience when you're using a browser. So the one that you've already seen is the browser action. It's the button. There's two things in the browser action. It's both the button on the toolbar and then the pop-up, the small little window when the user clicks the icon. Those are two separate UI tips. You can have just the button or the button and the pop-up. You can't have just the pop-up because it needs to come from somewhere, which is the button. The second UI element that you can use is badges. So badges are a little number on the button of your icon, and it could be like unread notifications or a number of challenges available or homeworks left to complete or whatever you want, or friends that I can reach out to, whatever you want. It's a little number, and user design shows that all of us, when we see that little number, it attracts our attention and our focus. It's called persuasive design. So the next UI element is a context menu. So this makes it that when you right click on any part of the page, you have a new menu item that connects to your extension. Another one is the Omni box. So the Omni box is the name that Chrome gives the box that you typed the URL, but you can also search for stuff and you can do a lot of operations within that box. It's called the Omni box. You can autocomplete or create custom commands in that address bar if you wanted. So for instance, you could create an extension that helps you search your friends or the pen directory from the Chrome address bar. So I would just type Arvin and it would help me find, all the Arvins that are at pen in an interface. There's one missing. That's too bad. So then another thing that you can do is injected UI. So inject tooltips or overlays into the page that you are manipulating. And then the last thing that isn't mentioned here, but is on the screenshot afterwards, is the sidebar. So in Chrome, you can always open a sidebar, and you could create sidebars for your own Chrome extension. So like, for instance, one Chrome extension that I didn't put in my slide, but that I really loved from my class was an extension called Fly History. I don't know about you, but as an international person, I have to fly home, and it's a hassle and all of that. I'm always monitoring flights. So on Google Flights, this extension allows you to clip any flight from Google Flights. So you're searching flights in Google Flights, you do clip, and it has a history of all the flights that you've clipped, and you can go back to them, you can monitor their price and all of that. So that's what the sidebar is really convenient, because then it persists all of your flights throughout all of the pages that you're researching. So when I'm researching like the cheapest flights to go to France, and I really don't care what are the days or this, I can continue my research through airlines and clip the best airlines, the best flights on my sidebar. So there's really a lot of possibilities. I really like this design space. One of the things I really believe is that it's it's more important to have a good idea than a performative one. Like a lot of times in the tech space, you have people who have really nicely polished presentation who are selling you the world, but really good ideas, they're all about the details. So what's really nice here is that you spend, and we spend so much time in our browser. Basically, this is just saying that you're building something that has to do with the browser. So basically, it's sort of like if this is all the world of possibilities in tech, like the stuff that lives in a browser is at least, this. So here you get to think about all of the UI elements. So the sidebar I was talking about here. So here it's used in an example of providing a dictionary. So a dictionary could be a really good application. One application could be a sidebar that's sort of like the Harry Potter goggles, I forget what they're called, that helps you find this information, or that helps you find whether the content is good for your mental health. I don't know. So here you get a visual of all of the UI possibilities. So you have the sidebar, you have the omnibar up there. That's an example of a tooltip when you're hovering over an extension. That's an example of an action button, the Google Dictionary. This is a context menu, so you're right-clicking somewhere and you're getting a new context menu. You can create notifications. Here's an example of a badge. So this is the button of a drop, and this is the badge on top of it when an event is turned on. And this is a sample pop-up. Oh, and the last one that we haven't discussed because it's really of a niche is that you can also overwrite existing pages in the browser. So that would be if you were doing like a very specific theme. This doesn't really work with your theme, but oh yeah, new tab. You could replace the interface for a new tab. So those of you who know me, I think, know what my new tab is. So this is something I changed like in 2017. I was trying to find the most productive new tab, and I was like, what are the links that I need to put there? Like what are and then I realized, oh shit, oops, we have to take it out of well, anyway. It dawned on me that every time I was opening a new tab, there was a flip coin that I was going to be distracted and pulled in some rabbit hole. And it doesn't matter what it was. If it was the news, I was going to be pulled in a news rabbit hole. If it was, developer stuff, I was going to be pulled in some new thing. So I realized that actually, when I'm opening a new tab, it's already because I'm reaching for something. I do not want another idea to be placed in front of me. So for me, changing into this very, very cute, but there's not much to be done with this. Like it's cute, okay, let's move on. It doesn't distract me. And so that is something, I've had it for now 8 years. It's really useful. So Chrome extensions, of all kinds can be really useful. So now I promised that I would be giving you, this is the example I give my students in class. I promised I would be giving you a slightly more advanced example. So the example I'm giving you is Snippet Collector. It sort of demos a few different kinds of interfaces and exchange from the background script to the pop-up and so on. It shows you how to store things. It shows you how to deploy an extension that uses React. So it has everything that you need. You can use everything that you want. You can clone it. You can whatever you want. It's completely. Oh, there's no license. I need to put a license. Okay. And then the other thing that's really nice that you'll see here is that it has a GitHub workflow to automatically release the Chrome extension in a zip file. So that's a nice little touch that you have in this repo. So what you could do is you could use this as a programmer. I've been programming since I'm really young, since I was 5. And one of the things I want to tell you, the reason I'm telling you this is that when computer science and programming got to university, they got super paranoid about copying stuff. There was like plagiarism and academic integrity and all of that. But really, in programming, the reason why it's moved so fast is because people copy everything. When somebody has a good idea or has written good code, you copy it and you change it and you improve it. So all of the examples that we're giving him, just slice them for parts, take any idea that you find useful. And if somebody asks, say, yeah, I took that idea from here. It was a really great idea and I made it better. But you really have to have no shame in borrowing and using and putting together. At the end of the day, as developers, your responsibility is what you deliver. So once you put something with your name, you're responsible for all the breakage and everything and all of that. But as you're putting it together, all rules go, everything is open. So if this is a good starting point, go for it. If this isn't a good starting point and you're like, oh mother, this code is terrible. I don't understand anything here. Then start from Hello World or from something else, or ask ChatGPT to give you the stub code for a project, but not the free version. Do we have time for a live demo? I'll do a live demo at the end where I'll show you how to load an extension, but I don't think it's very difficult. The only thing that I would have shown you is that if there's any errors, you'll see them in the console. And there's multiple, I might demo this. Okay, so I need to tell you a few things about permission and security. This is going to come up a little bit. So Chrome extensions require you to provide them explicit permissions for anything you're going to use in manifest.json. So one of the things you're going to have to learn, and you'll see examples or GPT or the documentation, is how to identify the permissions that you need. Once you identify the permissions that you need and you put them in the file, everything will go smoothly. If you don't request them, things are just not going to work and you're going to be chasing your tail, not understanding what is going on. Because if there's one thing that's true is that the error messages when the permissions aren't correct, they're not really good. They're not like, hey, you forgot the permissions. They're like, alert, alert, somebody's trying to take over the browser, all systems shut down. So you have to make sure that you know how to translate that from, an actionable goal. So the common permissions are tabs or active tab as we've shown, storage, or all URLs if you want to change the content of the page. And extensions also follow something called content security policy, which means that they block inline scripts by default and encourages external JavaScript files. So this is where you're going to be familiar with a new principle called the least privilege principle. It's best practices. You could go ahead and say, I'll request all the tabs access, all URLs, all history and storage. You could ask access for everything. But in the real world, it's really better to only ask for what you need. The content scripts run in a sandbox, but they can see and modify DOM. So one of the things that's going to be a little bit delicate is understanding how to get the content script to talk to the background script, because it's very intentional that there's like a Chinese wall between them so that they cannot communicate. Protecting user data. There's no direct database call unless you implement external APIs, and everything is stored in local storage. And we'll see multiple versions of storage. And then the other thing that I already mentioned, but I'm going to mention again because repetition is the basis of pedagogy, is that there have been a recent change in the framework, and it's called Manifest v3. So as you're Googling stuff, a lot of what you're going to find is going to be for Manifest v2. Make sure that it says Manifest v3, or if it doesn't, copy paste whatever you find into ChatGPT and say, please tell me whether this applies to Manifest v2 or Manifest v3 and explain step by step or something to get it to provide its work. The biggest difference in Manifest v3 is that there was a concept called service worker that was connected to the content script, and that made things very easy, but a little bit less secure. Now that content service worker has been replaced by the persistent background page. Okay, there's another thing that this is not Chrome extension, it's more web development in general, but it's something that really is an obstacle for every newcomer in web development, and that's called CORS, Cross-Origin Resource Sharing. So it's a browser security mechanism that governs when a web page on domain A can make HTTP requests to a different domain on domain B. So why does it exist? It's to prevent malicious sites from secretly fetching or submitting sensitive data to services in another domain without users' knowledge. It enforces the same origin policy by default, and requests outside the same origin may be restricted unless explicitly allowed. So just so that you have more context as to that, that doesn't really give you the full story, but let me give it to you very quickly. So say that you're logged into your bank in one tab. You're logged into your bank, and let's say that you have Capital One as a bank. It's a big mobile bank, so a lot of people have it, and it's very technologically advanced. So a lot of things can be done through an API. So you're logged into Capital One Bank, and then in another tab, you're going to skeezywebsite.com. Now, skeezywebsite.com doesn't know if you're a Capital One user, doesn't know if you're logged in, but just for the heck of it, it's going to continuously in the background say, send me $100, send me $100, send me $100, send me $100. Now, in most situations, the person going to this website is not a Capital One user, or they are, but they are not logged in. They didn't do any transactions recently or whatever. But once in a while, especially if you get that website in front of enough users by spamming them or putting it in ads or something, then eventually there's going to be some users who happen to have the bad luck of being a Capital One user, and they just check their transactions, so their cookies are live, and their browser can still access all of their account as though they were logged in. So now Skeezy site website was waiting for that moment to have $100 sent to them, and then boom, ka-ching. That's a cross-origin resource. And so this mechanism was put into place in all browsers to ensure that something like that never happens. So that when you go to a website, you know for sure that that website isn't pretending to be you in some other website on your browser. So that whole mechanism is called CORS. The bad news is that CORS stops you from doing a lot of things that you would really want to do that would be really convenient of doing, but because allowing this would allow bad guys to do really bad stuff, it's not allowed. So for all of this reason, what might happen at some point is that you might get an error message that says access to fetch something from origin blocked. And then you know that you have a CORS policy issue and that you have to figure out how to resolve it. Now, I'm not going to, so one of the ways to resolve it in Chrome extension is to explicitly say which hosts you need to be allowed to make requests from. And that will solve some problems, but not all problems. It won't solve it when servers are trying to prevent you from making CORS requests to them. So I just wanted to put that on your headline, just so that you know that CORS is a huge issue when doing web development, that you're going to encounter it today and in this hackathon if you're doing Chrome extensions. But also, if you're a web developer, you're going to have this problem all throughout your experience as a web development. So it's a small problem. There's a lot of advice on how to solve it, but don't waste your time and know that CORS is really a big deal. It's not this weird keyword that appears just out of nowhere. It's something that you have to pay attention to. Okay, so now we were talking about how you might have to store stuff. And one of the things that we explained is how, from a security perspective, Chrome extensions store everything locally. Nothing is stored in the cloud. Everything is stored in the browser. And one of the things that's also interesting is that because it's trying to abstract the file system and everything having to do with the computer, you rarely store anything in files. In fact, a Chrome extension typically rarely has access to the file system. It's possible, but very few people do it. And most of the time, the most you'll access with files is when you're like triggering a download or something. Most storage is done with one of these three things. And the reason I'm covering them all here is that when I didn't, students would be so confused because they all look very similar, all these three things, but they're different, and they're slightly different in different ways. So the first one is Chrome.storage API. The local is that the data is stored on the user's machine. Pro, it's a simple key value storage. It's easy to use. It's permission-based. Cons, it's limited storage quotas, not ideal for large complex data. And also, it's sent with every request. So the server will see it in some encrypted form. It's like a cookie in that way. Two, local storage. So that's per extension origin. So it's sort of like Chrome storage, but then it's going to be much cleanly encapsulated in a Chrome.extension slash ID. So Chrome storage would be really useful to store key value pairs. Local storage can do everything that Chrome storage does, but it also allows you to store things like assets, like images or files that you might want to access from your Chrome extension. And then the last thing that you have is IndexedDB. So that is to store much larger amounts of structured data and where you want to be able to do queries. It has a much more database-like API. So it's more, IndexedDB is more when your extension has to deal with data. So for instance, you have a Chrome extension that is going to manipulate emails. So you might need to store the emails. Or you have a Chrome extension that is going to keep track of people. So you might have to have an IndexedDB with your contacts. Or you're creating a Pomodoro task timer. And so you might have an IndexedDB with all your tasks that you've ever done. So IndexedDB is when you want to store a lot of data as opposed to just save things. And then there's other approaches. There's cookies. That was the ancestor. It was the very first storage mechanism. So cookies is the oldest way of storing data in web. And then you also have external servers if you need large-scale or multi-user data. But both cookies and external servers are less common for Chrome extensions because the big feature is that you have access to the browser directly. And so local storage is probably the way to go. Okay. I'll go quickly towards common pitfalls, but I'll just read them so that you know about them, but then you'll have the slides to go towards them if ever you experience them. Oh, sorry, I changed the title. So no, this is not common pitfalls. This is the sample extensions. The pitfalls is afterwards. So here are projects. There were actually 19 projects, and I can give you a list of all 19 of them. But here, for the sake of time, I picked 5. And so this is from my undergrad course, CIS 350. These projects and all of the projects in the course are available for you to examine and repurpose any of their code. You can copy anything you want. You can build off of their ideas, whatever you want. Of course, if you build out of their extension and you present it at the hackathon, you have to credit them and you have to say, we're building from this original thing, and this is how it looked when they did it, and here's what our version looks like. So here's Penn Course Search. I'm going to go through this fast because you'll get to see it on your own. And I want to be sensitive to time, even if, can we go a little bit over? Yeah. So even if we'll go a little bit over, I don't want to spend too much time. So Penn Course Search is a extension that gives you the access to course data in a browser button. So you're browsing, you select CIS 350, you click on the button, and it shows you that data. And it gives you access to all of the courses that you've searched for. So you can go to the GitHub repo. This is an extension that showcases a button and the pop-up. And you can see their YouTube video as well. Web Styler is an extension to change how the visual aspect of a page. So for accessibility, but also just for personal preferences, if you prefer, if you're a Times New Roman stan, for instance. So this extension showcases button and pop-up. Pomodoro was a really nice little extension. It demos what it could be a side page. So the idea was to help you with productivity. So Pomodoro is a Chrome extension where you keep doing Pomodoro sessions to study. 25-minute sessions or 5-minute sessions. So these are sessions where you promise you're going to focus. And so here, every time you successfully complete a session, you acquire a reward that you can give your pet to keep them happy. If you don't give them enough rewards or food over time, they die. So here's a twist on the same idea. I just wanted to show you how two ideas can be implemented in completely different ways. So here they created Chromagachi. So instead of encouraging you to focus to feed your pet, here what they're doing is that they're measuring the time that you spend in each kind of website in Chrome. So there's two kinds of websites. There's productive websites, so Canvas or Gradescope, or websites associated with textbooks, and there's unproductive websites like YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or things like that. And so what it's doing is that it's keeping track of the amount of time you spend in each category of tabs. And it uses that to calculate the health of your little Chromagachi. If you spend more time in study pages, your Chromagachi is going to be happy. If you spend a lot of time in distracted pages, your Chromagachi is going to be sad. So it's a way of, and the UI that they're using is the landing page. So you see your Chromagachi every time you open a new tab, just like Mia, I see the cat. So every time you open a new tab, you get a reminder of whether you tend to be browsing for useful stuff or whether you tend to be wasting your time. So this was a really excellent project, and it really showcases how you can combine the design of Chrome extensions just so. Tabs off. So this was an extension to be able to quickly group tabs by how long they've been open and then close them. So for instance, you can select all of the tabs that have been open more than a week. Where's my more than a week or more than half a day? And it will show you here, and then you can click here to delete them. So this showcases a button and a pop-up. Okay, and then I think this is the last one. Yep. I wanted to show you an example of using AI API keys. So this is an example, and also this happens to be an example of an extension that doesn't use a UI framework. So this uses only vanilla JS. So if you want an example of a slightly simpler, so you can, that's why it doesn't really look super beautiful. It has like big old Web 2.0 buttons, but it works fine. It got a really good grade. What it does is that there's a first part where when you first install the extension, it asks you for an API key. Once you provide the API key, this is the interface. So you select whatever you want, and this is the selected text, and then you click Summarize Text, and it will produce a summary using GPT-4o. Okay, so this is mostly a proof of concept extension, but of course you could imagine many other applications in this vein. What's important in this extension is that because you are not making money off of this, and AI LLMs cost money, that's why using the user's API key ensures that you can provide something that uses LLMs without having to figure out how to pay for it yourself and how to charge the user. Okay, so now common pitfalls and how to solve them. So as we mentioned, you have to explicitly request permissions for whatever you do. So yeah, missing or incorrect permissions. What you might get as an error message is unchecked runtime last error. The tab's permission is not specified in the manifest, but you're trying to access it anyway. Inline script CSP issues. So if you are trying to include a script inline like this, no, not inline like this. If you're not using a source file, but if you're just using the script tag directly, it will be rejected in manifest v3, and this is why. So one of the things in manifest v3 is that the background page isn't always awake, and so you sometimes have to check if it's awake. So that's related to the errors that we just mentioned. So when the background listener or the content script are not communicating with each other, or one of them is closed. So that's the problem I was talking to you about CORS. So when you're having a CORS problem on the extension side, one of the possible ways to fix it would be to add the domain in the manifest.json. That will only solve the issue if the CORS comes from Chrome and not from the other server. So sometimes as you're making change on your extension, those changes won't be deployed right away. And so you'll be like, but I don't understand. I just made this, but I don't see it printing or whatever. So that's something that happens fairly frequently. Make sure, so sometimes the extension can be cached if you don't reload. So go to Chrome and make sure to hit reload each time you update the code. I want to caution you that it's not necessary. Sometimes it works without you doing reload, but who knows why? So you can't rely on it always working without doing reload. So then sometimes you have browser compatibility issues. My recommendation is to only work in Chrome. It's not to say that your extension won't work outside of Chrome, but it's just that in a hackathon, sleepless night tight work situation, you don't really want to worry about other browsers. And that's how startups do it as well. Any startup that comes out of Y Combinator is just building for Chrome until they have their first revenue. And I just want to justify why, because nobody's going to pay you to build something on more platforms before you've proven that it's actually useful on one platform. Makes sense, I think. Okay, so other types of issues with Manifest v3 that you might encounter. Again, for security and efficiency purposes, Chrome changed the architecture in 2019 from Manifest v2 to Manifest v3. One of the things that you might be like, okay, this change happened in 2019, like this is not that big news, but it actually is news because things take time to change. So Google said we're going to stop Manifest v2 in 2019, but it gave people 6 years to make that change. But that is, it has started in 2025. So in 2025, manuscripts v2 are no longer allowed on the Chrome store. You can't install them. They might be blocked and so on and so on. But because it took so long, you might still get a lot of Stack Overflow resources on Manifest v2. Like until it was blocked, there's still developers somewhere in the world that are working on producing Manifest v2 extensions. So as I said, it is important to confirm you are getting Manifest v3 code and snippets. So you can ask ChatGPT, you can ask, make sure it's Manifest v3 and show me what the background worker is, for instance, because Manifest v2 doesn't have a background worker. Okay, a few closing words, and then I'll have time for questions. If there's really an idea that if really something I tell all my students, like there's never have I seen a student who I was like, hey student, your idea is too small. Your idea is too minimal. Your idea is too simple. I've never said that to anybody. I've never said that to anybody. I've been teaching for 15 years. I have never said that to anybody. I've never said that to anybody. I've never said to a student, hey, your project is not interesting enough. You need to jazz it up. I've never said that. And that's because you all aim way too high. So for this hackathon, if you aim way too high, it's just going to make things a little bit more of a drag. It's going to make you feel a little bit less competent. It's going to make you feel a little bit less confident. Don't make that mistake. Just find a small but real problem that you have. Just be minimalistic about what you're trying to do, but really commit to making it a good idea. Try to create something that's feasible. So I want to stop there and I want to tell you what was the best. Actually, last year, the hackathon, nobody gave anybody instructions to do a Chrome extension. There was one of the projects was a Chrome extension. It happened to be the best project. It was a project called, I can share it with you, but it was a project called Task to Calendar. It was a Chrome extension such that you could go on any web page for an assignment or a course web page, and it tells you, oh, homework 1 is due that day. You click on Task to Calendar, and it adds that to your calendar. So it was a Chrome extension. The thing that it did is that it just parsed due dates in a web page. It didn't do it 100% of the time, but it did it for most of the pages that you encountered. That was the best idea that anybody ever had. The theme was productivity. None of the other apps solved any productivity problem an inch to where that one solved it. So it was a team of three. They put a lot of time trying to think of something that would actually work. They were not trying to razzle dazzle or impress everybody, but they were trying to do something that worked, and it really worked. Not just the extension, but the prize. They won, I think, the hackathon. So start simple, basic UI, minimal functionality, focus on a minimal feature set, and then iterate, add things, features in the core. Make sure to use GitHub. So one of the things that happens a lot is that since this is the first time that you're working as a team, if you were working on a full stack project, you would have a lot of, it works on my computer, but I can't deploy problems. Fortunately, you're not going to have that with Chrome extensions. But since you're working as a team, it's really good that you commit to the repository, that you use the repository as the source of truth so that you're not wasting time with different versions or overwriting each other's work. I recommend that you look at the snippet collector because it's a fully functional GitHub repo for a Chrome extension, and it's a really good starting point. And then again, have fun, explore, learn, and be creative. Like at the end of the day, this is to create a portfolio item, but the portfolio item, like it's only going to be as impressive as you had fun, when you're going to be interviewing for jobs. If ever it comes up, and you talk about it, you don't want to be sweating bullets. You don't want to be remembering just how hard it was. You want to remember it was fun. We had a great idea. We put it together, and that was my first software engineering experience. And since then, I've been building a lot of other stuff. So you really want to have fun. You want to explore. You want to learn. You want to be creative. And also, if you think the other reason I showed you two projects that had the same idea is that it's possible for two groups to try to implement the same idea and to do it in completely different ways, and that would be fine. So don't over-stress or overthink or try to be super creative or super novel, because as I said, I've never said to any student, your idea is too simple. And it's true. I've never said that. Maybe now that I've said that, you're going to be, first of the first promo. If that's the case, I'll take a selfie. I'll say, for 15 years I didn't say anything, but then this person came along and they needed help. Okay. So next steps. There's a book. I don't think you should read it, but I wanted you to know if you type that book in PDF, I shouldn't tell you this, but you'll find it downloadable. But what I recommend is Chrome has a lot of tutorials. They take 20 minutes. So, like if you're ordering dinner and, you're waiting for it to come, you could do the 2 or 3 tutorials in that time to start getting familiar and confident. Then I suggest you do hands-on practice. Make sure to set up that hello world. Make sure to practice loading that unpacked extension. I can show it to you if you want. And then look at the snippet collector extension. It's a really good starting point because it's showing you how to package the Chrome extension when you have React. And I just want you to know that that's a slightly technical point. That's not hard, but having it done for you, there's no shame in admitting that it's good for a hackathon to have that done for you. And then my advice is that there's links here for every sample project. So go explore them and install them and play around with them and see what you want to do with that. Okay, so if you have any questions, good luck on this hackathon. I'm going to be taking questions now, and then email me if you have any big questions. But I'm preparing my other class. I'm really overwhelmed, so I might not get to it. But I will try if you send me the. Okay. Do you have any questions? Okay. So since you don't have any questions, I am going to do a walkthrough. And the thing I want you to pay attention to in my walkthrough is the different consoles that you can open, because one of the things that you need to understand is that if we go back to the architecture here, the content script, the pop-up, and the background script, there are three different components. They're being run in three different sandboxes. They have three different consoles. So if one of them is failing, but you're only looking at the console for the pop-up, you're not going to see the error message. And if you put console.log and console.log, but you don't see anything, it's going to drive you crazy. So I want to show you, where that is. So I'm going to have to figure out how to. It's only going to take a minute, so I appreciate your patience. Okay. What would be the best way of doing this? What does it say there? Okay. Okay. I don't think, so let me go to the snippet collector. And I'll just show you what I do. So GitHub workflow, what does this do? This is a GitHub action which checks out the code in your repository and then compiles it using all of the dependencies into a zip file. So this zip file here, please, could you just sit down? Figuring out what to show is very stressful. And when I'm hearing your codes rearranging, this is only going to take a minute. I'm really hungry, and this is a volunteer. I want to head home. So if you could just wait just 2 more minutes. Thank you. So this release code, it is executed every time that you make a change. And every time that you make a change, it creates this release. So this release is the Chrome extension ready to be loaded. Okay, here. So now when I go to Chrome extensions, I'm in developer mode. It's triggered up here, developer mode, and I can do load unpacked. So here it's not letting me select here because unpacked means that it has to be a folder. So I'm going to go, I'm gonna unzip it in my window here. Okay. So here you'll see that I unzipped it in this folder. Call this folder snippet collector. And load unpacked, snippet collector select. Okay, so now it said extension loaded, and you can see the extension here. So if there were any errors here, there'd be a button here that says errors. Now, this is where what I'm showing you is really important. Here, it has a background script. So it says view service worker. So here you can click on view service worker. And so here you get access to the console of the background script. So if I had done anything console print, it would appear here. Now, the other thing that you will see, oh, I need to, let me peg it here. So I just added it up here. I just added it up here. Wait, where's my mouse? There we go. So this is the snippet collector, okay? So right now it doesn't have anything, so I can select something here and do capture snippet. And now you can see that what I selected, extension may no longer, is here, and I can edit it. I can copy it, or I can delete it, okay? So let me do that again. Select, capture snippet, and it's in the snippet collector. Now here's the important thing I want to show you. To access the state of the pop-up, you right-click the pop-up and you do inspect. And now you go to console. So here, snippet saved. This was printed by the script in background.js. Okay. And I think that is it. So if ever you have, if you ever are trying to debug an extension, you have to make sure to open them from both of these places. And then if ever you are doing a content script that's injecting into an actual page, then that will be in the developer console of the actual page. So I don't have an example of that, but it would be here. So there's three consoles that you can get the output of. The background script is in the pop-up. The content script is in the pages console. And the initialization is in the service worker that's on the front page here. Okay, so all of these places where you have to see if there's information whenever there's a problem. Okay, that's all I wanted to show. Now I'm going to remove it from my browser. Okay, so those of you who wanted to leave, now you can leave. And if anybody else has questions. So the theme is health and wellness. Okay, you're welcome. So very welcome. Can I take a picture of you? Thank you very much. Oh, yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much. So I wish you a lot of fun for this hackathon. Have fun. And you might know I will be one of the judges and I'll be doing it on Zoom, but I'm really excited about the project that you'll be producing. And if you are, with your agreement, if your Chrome extensions, if you like them, I'll show them to my students in my course to inspire them after the ones from last year maybe inspired you. Thank you, Trishna, for setting all of this up and for inviting me to do this.